At 12:30 on November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was shot in an open motorcade through downtown Dallas. The exposure came from the published route. A sharp turn from Houston onto Elm forced the car down to about 11 miles an hour, wide open. The route had run in the local papers days before it happened. Count the facts of that minute, because they are the whole case. One open limousine, a grassy slope on the right, the depository on the left, and the Secret Service advance detail that had signed the route as safe. This was not chaos. It was a system of decisions made hours apart, a route chosen, a bubble top left off, a building left unsecured. What followed was not one mystery, but a chain. What the Warren Commission found, what the House Committee later revised, where the record has real gaps, and why serious people still argue over the turn onto Elm. Welcome to the Tactical Historian, where events are read like blueprints. To understand how 30 yards of Elm Street decided the afternoon, go back to the route the morning it was still only ink on paper. The Secret Service advance file on Dallas closed with every box checked. The Secret Service worked a doctrine of layered cover, advance men days ahead, agents on the follow car, police lining the curbs. Read as a checklist, nothing on that page was missing. The gap was not in the checklist, it was in the route. It ran in the Dallas papers days before, the same ink that turned Houston Street onto Elm. Publish the route and the crowd can cheer. Publish it, and anyone who means harm learns exactly where the car will slow and from which windows. Every open motorcade makes that same trade. Visibility for the crowd, visibility for anyone else. So the Commission's case began where the shooter did. At the window 60 yards above the turn, the papers had already printed. Investigators recovered a Mannlicher Carcano rifle and 3 spent cartridge cases from the 6th floor, roughly 60 yards above where the car had to slow. A week later, President Johnson formed the Warren Commission. It reported after nearly 10 months, all to explain a gap the Dallas papers had printed before a shot was fired. Walk the turn as it happened, minute by minute, from the moment the limousine left Houston Street. At 12:30 in the afternoon, the car swung onto Elm and slowed to a crawl, exactly where the printed route had said it would. From the 6th floor window 60 yards behind it came 3 shots in roughly 8 seconds. The Warren Commission's count, one the House Committee would later reopen. No stopwatch in an agent's pocket caught those seconds. It was a bystander on a concrete pedestal above the grass, a Dallas dressmaker named Abraham Zapruder, holding a home movie camera. His film runs about 26 seconds and holds a few hundred frames. It remains the only continuous visual record of the shooting, the reason the timeline can be argued frame by frame instead of guessed. Then follow one man out of the plaza because the sequence turns on him. Lee Harvey Oswald worked in that depository building. Within minutes of the shots, he left it, and at 10 minutes before 2, Dallas police took him inside a nearby movie theater, arrested first over a killing 8 blocks away, and only then tied to Elm Street. He never reached a trial. 2 days after the assassination, as police moved Oswald through the basement of their own headquarters, a Dallas nightclub owner named Jack Ruby stepped from the crowd and shot him dead on live television. So the one man who could answer for the turn onto Elm died in the custody built to hold him. Ruby was convicted and died in prison, the trial buried with them both. Why not reroute the motorcade or hold the car faster through the turn? It came back to the same trade the route already forced in Dallas. Publish it for the crowd, and you publish it for anyone else watching too. You can mass agents. You cannot mass certainty. And every fix opened another gap. Slow the car, and you widen the marksman's window. Reroute it late, and you strand the crowds the visit existed to reach. The record refused to close on the shooter, too. Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union, married Marina there, and come home, a file that fell into the seam between the FBI and the State Department. That is what chain of command does to the right call. A planner answers to a schedule, an agency to another agency. No single hand was ever fully in charge of the moment the car slowed, and Gallup has found most Americans still unwilling to believe Oswald acted alone. So count what that unclosed seam cost, because the loop it opened runs in a circle. The gap between the FBI and the State Department was never closed before Elm Street, so the government owed a full accounting after. That accounting became the Warren Commission, which sat for nearly 10 months and took testimony. The final record filled 26 volumes, a shelf a man could not read in a year, all to account for 6 seconds on Elm. Yet the doubt held. The commission answered who fired, but never the question underneath: how the shooter's file slipped through in the first place. The commission was thorough, and that is the honest concession. It interviewed hundreds of witnesses and named a lone gunman. Congress reopened the case in the mid-1970s. 2 more years of work, the same afternoon reopened, and the country walked out arguing over the same 6 seconds it walked in with. Sad Dealey Plaza beside the other motorcade that nearly failed the same way. Washington, 1981. A shooter in a press line a few paces from the car. But the comparison is incomplete. In Washington, Jerry Parr shoved Reagan into the car and turned it to the hospital, saving minutes. On Elm, the fatal round arrived before any hand could move. Give every side its due. The detail was reading a printed route and working an open car it had been ordered to keep open. The House committee agreed Oswald fired, yet its acoustic panel heard a 4th shot on a police dictabelt, a finding a later National Academy review dismissed as noise. And in 1992, Congress ordered nearly all remaining records into one National Archives collection, an admission in law that the accounting was not finished. The pile grew into the millions of pages. One afternoon now weighs more than any reader could lift in a lifetime. So the argument survives for one plain reason. No hand ever owned the moment the car slowed. Weigh what you can name and decide if it closes the case. Next time, a protection failure that left no shooter to question at all. This is the Tactical Historian, where events are read like blueprints.